I've always been very different from the rest of people. This has been very obvious by the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I behave, and the way I move my hands and gestures. This has been a problem since I was a child, because people tend to be tribalistic. In other words, they tend to join gangs together or people together and then form a new gang. This has advantages, survival advantages, like for example being more capable of surviving in the wild, and in cities they have an economy that works outside the bigger economy of the city. So the group works within a big society, and they could be related by blood, or they could be related by ideology, or they could be related by philosophy, or they could be related by almost anything, like, for example, cheering a team of a football team, or American football, soccer, whatever, baseball team. They could also favor food, and they are chefs or they are cooks, and they enjoy that art. Or they could be sellers, salesmen, and they sell stuff and they have conventions and so on. So the problem with me is that I've never found a group that is actually similar enough to me to be able to work with them. All groups have their imperfections, and wherever I point out those imperfections, what happens is the majority of those groups just ignore me, or attack me as a retaliation, as opposed to admit that I am right or that I might be right. They don't even contemplate the possibility. So you're left with an individual that has very specific characteristics that has nothing to do with the majority of people, or very little, I would say. Perhaps the only similar things are biological similarities, like eating, sleeping, and needing shelter and clothing. But most of all, my philosophy is very different. For example, I don't believe in religiosity or spirituality or all those things that are, in my opinion, a waste of time. Most groups do believe in some sort of spirituality and some sort of divine power and so on. Now, I use the term divine sometimes to refer to very important things that should be respected, but I do not believe that those are things that belong to a god or a goddess or the gods. I believe, whatever I believe or whatever other people believe are irrelevant, in my opinion, because beliefs are, easily dissolved. They have no substance. There's no evidence, and therefore it's a waste of time to talk about it. Like, for example, if somebody tells me that they believe in fairies and that the fairy grants them every day a wish, and it just so happens that those fairies grant them the wishes that happen to be the ones that they receive, but whenever the fairies doesn't give them the wish that they wanted, perhaps they attribute that to an angry fairy that wasn't in a good mood that day. So it's all a series of inventions to hold that belief system in place. And I just abhor that. And I'm not only talking about religion, but also about any sort of, energetic spirituality, mantra, karma, stuff like that. Scientific method was invented to make people less charlatanic, if that word exists. Less prone to lies and to inventions that have no ground on reality. So, for example, if you claim something with science, you have to prove it with an experiment. And if the experiment goes wrong and you cannot reproduce it, it means that it's not in the realm of science, but in the realm of belief or other types of things that do not hold to scrutiny, are not held to scrutiny, or cannot be held to scrutiny because they are not reproducible. They are not reproducible experiments. You cannot retest them for evidence, and therefore invalid. This is something so simple, and yet you would say that everybody would know it by the end of high school, but it seems that nobody knows about that. There's no real education about science and the scientific method. It seems that the majority of the education is given to follow orders and not to think by oneself. And that's a very serious problem, because then conspiracism and all those conspiracy theorists and all those people that are rebellious, more or less like me, that don't like the economical system that is in place right now, start to become truthful. They start to be right, because all of a sudden you have a system. I mean, you can prove it every day by going to a school and listening to all the crap that they have been inflicted in their minds. For example, things like patriotism, singing the hymn of their country, raising a flag, perhaps even praying on school, having religious topics, and talking about being very severe about not accepting that religiosity in their souls, or whatever they want to call it, right? In reality, in their minds. And so there's a very profound implication in that there is no, you can have your education, but as long as you keep following orders. Because if you don't follow orders, and if you don't have that dogma in place, you might just become a rebel, and we don't like rebels. We want our society as it is, pyramid scheme, and we don't want you to complain because of your decadent lifestyle. We want you to accept your meager existence. And that's very clear for anyone that has gone to any kind of school, unless you're in an financially elite school. You're going to be brainwashed with, unfortunately, a bunch of crap, nonsense. And I think it's very on purpose crap to make people illogical and nonsensical, to not be able to solve problems and go back and, like babies, go back to the government, or go back to parents, or go back to the political leader, or the boss of the company, etc. So it became they really create a man-childs, if you will, that are by appearance they are mature, but by personality they are children, still children, very mature, very dependent, and almost useless. It's a very, very disappointing experience to look at this world from my perspective, and not being able to find any sort of mind that is really willing to understand, perhaps not the universe, because it's too wide of a topic, but perhaps a specialization that will allow them to create a better society, along with other specialized individuals. I still haven't found an alternative thinking person that can join me, right? because they tend to, for example, the only society that, or group of people that are considered alternative and are part of something that is actually productive is the open source ecology group that creates, do-it-yourself style trucks and houses and aquaponics. Those type of people are the ones that are perhaps the closest to my mindset. And yet I haven't contacted them and I don't know how to reach them. And then again, what I chose has very little to do with that. For example, I chose programming, and more specifically game programming, which is a very different subject matter. And I always wanted to be independent. I didn't want a company to tell me what ideas to pursue, because I believe that I have good ideas and they are worthy of pursuing, and perhaps someday I was going to have some sort of allowance by the company to allow me to explore my idea after working for them in available franchises. But the problem is that those companies make a lot of money. Perhaps they exploit a lot their employees. They don't give them good lifestyle, and I don't trust them. Also, the best companies are in the United States, and I don't think, the world is filled with excellent programmers, much better than me. They're gonna get the best programmers, not me. So I still believe I can make a game, but I'm not the best programmer, because I chose to be the generalist, a little art, a little composition, a little programming, a little artificial intelligence. And so that doesn't allow me to create things quickly, but actually it takes a lot of time for me to do anything at all. But then again, I can do almost everything that is required for a game. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of time. Therefore, people like me have to get part-time jobs to maintain themselves, but at the same time aren't able to finish their projects, and it's frustrating, of course. I have thousands of problems, and what's going to happen? What's going to happen with the idea? I mean, I finish a game, for example. The possibilities of video games and the possibilities of excellence in education and edutainment, which is my main goal in this life, to create edutainment, is not explored yet by the mainstream media, or actually by anyone. Edutainment games right now are boring and are not very challenging. They're generally for children, and they're not targeted to really be fun. They're either fun and not educational at all, or they are educational but not fun at all. So it's a problem. I want to change that and make both things work, education and fun, together. It's a recurrent theme in my mind, and unfortunately it takes a lot of talent. Now, if you for any reason have any sort of talent regarding those things, like programming, simulations, artificial intelligence, you're an artist and you're an animator, you like to create game engines, not use them, then you're probably going to be, music composition, very important, then you're gonna probably be part of my team someday, or whenever you want. I love open source software, but if you don't use them, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. You can use whatever open source software you want. It's very complicated, for creating a game engine, for example, you need to know calculus, at least for physics and artificial intelligence, linear algebra for computer graphics. You need to know trigonometry, which is a subsection of linear algebra and calculus, and so many other things that are, statistics, if you want a little more artificial intelligence, probability, etc. It's very complicated. And then you have, optimization part, and then, put, the game tools that work with the game engine, so that your artists and your musicians can produce artwork. It's complicated, but it can be done. Many people have done it already, but they don't reach the quality that I would like to reach. And if this takes decades, and if it's my only project that I ever do in my entire life, I don't care. I want to do that, because you can't waste your life living someone else's dream. You have to experience life by following what you feel that is important for society. Thanks for listening.